Hi everyone, Christina here. Thanks for joining me for another card video at my YouTube channel. Today's video is actually one that I created for the Simon Says Stamp YouTube channel, and I'm sharing it here as well. So big thank you to Simon for allowing me to share it. I'm going to be showing you two different ways to use distress ink when you're making a watercolor background. One is one of my most favorite techniques ever, which is ink smushing, and the other is using the inks almost in a more traditional watercolor sense with a watercolor brush. Let's get into it. Today I'm going to be using this stamp set with very large gradings. This is the XL grading stamp set, and there is a coordinating die set that you can purchase separately if you'd like. But today, this video is focusing on distress inks and how you can use them for watercolor backgrounds in two different ways. This first way is by ink smushing. So I'm smushing my ink pad down onto a slick surface. This is an Easy Clean Matte from Tonic. And I've smushed on 4 different colors. I'm using mustard seed, picked raspberry, peacock feathers, and seedless preserves. Kind of like put them out in a little bit of an organic pattern. And then I'm spritzing down the inks with my distress sprayer that just has clean water in it. It's activated those inks, made them much more fluid. And now I'm going to take some Strathmore 5x7 cold pressed watercolor paper and press that down into the inks, using my fingertips to run across each section, kind of smushing all of those inks together and having them mix. When I lift up, I get a really organic pattern here. I'm going to tap off some of that really liquid areas at the bottom and maybe even use a paper towel to sop some of that up. And then I'll use a heat tool to dry this. You don't have to use a heat tool, but it definitely speeds the process along. I'm then going to pounce it into the leftovers from those smushed inks. And this is going to give some additional detail and kind of texture with colors on top of each other. This is where you get kind of a grungy background. Now at this point, I really loved that blue color at the bottom, and I wanted to add more blue to the overall look of this. So after I pounced through and added some more colors, I hit that with my heat tool, and then I cleaned off my mat, and I'm going to do just peacock feathers. So I've got a little bit of that color. I'm going to spritz it down quite a bit, make it super liquidy, and then pounce the corner of my piece down into that color. Now, it didn't really give too much of a blue shade, but it was just enough to change that big block of pink that was in that top corner. So I ended up doing this twice. That first one was really liquidy, and this time I'm not going to spray it quite as much. And it's going to give me a little bit more of a concentrated blue shade. So I'm just going to hit that with my heat tool until everything is dry. So one of the things that I really love about distress inks is that after they're dry, they can be reactivated. So this is a dry background here, and I'm kind of flicking on some water onto this area, just water droplets. I'm going to pick up my watercolor sheet, kind of tip it around. That gets the water moving a little bit within those puddles. And then I'm using a paper towel to pick up that color. And it gives it almost a bleached look. I think it looks really, really neat. This is one of my most favorite ways to use distress inks. So after that's completely dry, I'm left with this kind of colorful, grungy background. So now on to method 2, which is still smushing your inks, but onto a palette, onto a separate palette that you can pick the colors up from. I'm using a large paintbrush. This is a size 8 brush, and I'm going to be painting with these inks as if they are traditional watercolor paints. Starting with mustard seed, being very messy, just sort of painting blobs of color. And I'm also, after I start painting with one color, I might dip my brush in water and kind of spread that around. The colors don't mix quite as much this way. There's definitely more of a defined edge to each color. So after I have my initial colors down, I hit that with that heat tool, and then I come in with a second layer of color. And by now, the inks on my palette are much more watered down. They're not quite as strong. And they're going to layer on top of the colors underneath and get a mix of colors. See that kind of red-orange shade in the top color, in the top corner? That's because that's picked raspberry on top of mustard seed. And you get more of a green right over this yellow section in the bottom corner because it is peacock feathers over mustard seed. I also love doing this because you get a really cool hard edge to all the little blobs that you paint. I'm going to hit that with my heat tool once again to dry everything. And then I'm going to do that same water droplet technique that I did with the first example. Just spraying the water into my hand and then flicking the water droplets onto my project. I'll tip that so I get a little of that water moving, and then place my paper towel over the top to pick up those colors. And on this one in particular, you really can see the water droplet texture because there's more wide areas of color. So now I'm going to bring in that stamp set. We're going to do some stamping directly over the top. And I love this stamp set because it has really large greetings that go over the top of colorful backgrounds really, really well. So I'm prepping each background with an anti-static powder tool and then stamping the large greetings in Versamark ink. I'm walking my fingertips over the stamp each time, making sure that it's nice and pressed down evenly. In fact, I stamped them twice because this watercolor paper does have a little bit of a texture. I then applied some alabaster embossing powder from Brutus Monroe, and I'm actually going to heat emboss this twice. I noticed that that texture was really eating up some of that embossing powder, and since my stamp was still on the door of my MISTI, I stamped it twice. So I'm going to stamp directly over the top, apply more embossing powder, and then hit that with my heat tool. And you'll get a much more solid white when you do it this way. After I had this first background finished with the stamping, I went on to the second background and I switched up the greeting that I used this time. I did the exact same order of steps. I did the anti-static powder tool, stamped in Versamark ink twice, applied embossing powder, and then heat set that. And I repeated it for the second layer of embossing powder. So now that I have my greetings on here, I'm going to use the A7 layers dies from Waffle Flower to trim these out. I thought it'd be really nice since these backgrounds are so colorful and dramatic. It would be nice to have a big, wide, white border on a 5x7 card. So I've cut those out, holding the dies in place with some washi tape. And now I'm going to put them on top of some white card bases. These card bases are made out of Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 110-pound cardstock, and I just adhered those with a little bit of foam tape. So those are the two cards for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know down in the comments which one you prefer. Do you like the ink smushing or do you like the watercolor brush method? Let me know which you think looks better, or if you are at a tie like I am. I love both for different reasons. On screen, I've got two more videos for you to check out. These are both going to be videos using distress inks for watercolor backgrounds. So check those out if you want to see a few different things you can do. And thank you so much for watching my videos and subscribing. I will be back tomorrow with the Day 6 Holiday Card Series live stream at 12 o'clock noon Mountain Time. Hope to see you there.